privilege for our nation. We are a democracy. We govern by the elected people that we choose. And this is a grand opportunity for us to listen to one another. Only one of the candidates will become the MP, but we can hear a prophetic voice, an inspirational word from any of the candidates that can influence the thinking before the person gets into the position of being our MP. I welcome all of you. I also welcome Robert Halfon from the Conservative Party, Phil Waite from Labour, Jeff Seif from Lib Dem, Hannah Clark from Green, and also I welcome Mark Goff when he gets here for UKIP. You've just been welcomed in the absence. An outline for the evening is this. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to tell us what they see as the important issues of this election. Following that, we will address some of the questions that have come forward. I want to thank you because I have over 50 questions given in. I've tried to collate them into the ones which were most popular, and also had some advice about what was most significant from the Harlow District Chamber of Commerce and a group of clerics, as we wanted to be both practical and we seek righteous and social justice too. As a result of the questions coming out, each candidate will have 2 minutes to address it, and then, with time permitting, we'll have a little bit of debate between each of the candidates before we move on to the next question. We will conclude with each candidate being given a final 2 minutes to say why they think you should give them your vote. So, as we begin, inviting each of the candidates in 2 minutes to say what they think are the most important issues about this election, I invite, first of all, Robert Halfon to speak.
Well, good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you to Harlow, and thank you, everyone, for coming. I worked hard in Harlow and across the villages since I was backed as MP in 2010. And wherever I'm out and about in Harlow, the priorities are clear for the coming few years. The first is to build an even better Harlow. I worked hard to secure millions of pounds of government investment in Public Health England, in our advanced manufacturing centre, bringing thousands of jobs, millions of pounds for our roads to reduce traffic, hundreds of thousands of pounds for affordable homes. I will continue to work hard to bring investment into Harlow and the villages, because that is what brings jobs and prosperity into our town. I've also championed apprenticeships and education. Apprenticeships are up by 90 in the last year in Harlow alone. We have 900,000 in our country, the highest ever on record. As I've said, I've secured millions for our new advanced manufacturing centre at Harlow College. I've also ensured that we have the right funding for our schools. And most of the schools under the National Funding Formula will actually benefit from increased funding. As said today in the manifesto, no one will lose out. I worked hard to cut the cost of living, to freeze fuel duty. We're going to have an energy price cap. I've campaigned hard for the national living wage, which we've introduced, and a significant tax cut for low earners. And I'll continue to work hard to cut the cost of living for Harlow families. We need to cherish our villages, cherish the environment in which they are. I am also acting to protect our NHS with some increased nurses and doctors in Harlow Hospital, and I'm doing everything possible to ensure that Brexit means Brexit. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. I now invite Phil Waite, who is the Labour candidate, to speak.
Thank you. My name is Phil Waite and I'm the Labour candidate for Harlow. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to introduce myself this evening to you in advance of the general election. These are challenging times, and none of us should underestimate what power we hold to determine the future of our country, our town, and the lives of those that we love, and when we vote on June the 8th. I'd like to tell you some of the reasons why I believe that voting for me as your Labour Party representative is the best interests of all of these. Firstly, I've lived and worked in the town for over 30 years. I've brought my family up in the town. My children have been to the schools in Harlow, and my father's been through the health system quite recently, and he's currently in a care home. So I know the difficulties we're all facing at the moment. Secondly, I've spent 30 years working in Harlow. I've worked first of all at the Playhouse, just next door to here, where I had various jobs, ended up as a stage manager, up until the closure of it, quite a long, 20 odd years ago. I then did 19 years working for Tesco's in various roles, both in retail and then in distribution. So I know what it's like to work in this town and what it's like to try to live and bring up your family in this town. 5 key pledges that I want to introduce to this campaign is, first of all, safer communities. Harlow needs more police. The police that have been cut need to be replaced. We also need to replace the PCSOs. We need housing desperately, and Labour will work to introduce proper housing of all types, including building 1 million homes over the next 5 years. We'll also introduce tenants' rights, because clearly that's been a major issue. We'll fight for the NHS and social care. They're both in crisis at the moment, and they need substantial investment. And we'll fight for an education system that works for all, where there is proper investment and the pupil premium isn't diminished. So while there might be more money spent, there are more children going through the education system and they'll cost more money. We'll also fight for secure jobs for all. So I'm passionate to lift the public sector pay gap and to get to a real living wage of £10 per hour.
Thank you. I now invite Jeff Seif of the Lib Dems to speak.
Good evening, everybody, and I'm glad to be back here again after 2 years. For me and the Liberal Democrats, there is only one issue in this election. It's Brexit. It's the sole reason that this election has been called prematurely and opportunistically, and it is the single event that's going to shape the policies, actions and spending of the next government, whatever its complexion. Put simply, I think if implemented, whether it's soft or hard, or that we jump over the cliff because they can't do a deal, and I think that's quite likely, and it may come up during the course of our discussions later on, it will represent the biggest and most reckless mistake a so-called democratic government will have made in peacetime. Brexit means Brexit? What meaningless twaddle from a hypocritical, opportunist, incompetent, spineless bunch of politicians, and I'm talking about both the Tories and Labour. Brexit means uncertainty, disinvestment, divisiveness, devaluation, unemployment, wasted resources, lost opportunities, and a threat to the peace and prosperity of future generations. And let me tell you something, these are not only my words, these are the words of our Prime Minister, Theresa May. In a beautiful worded speech presented on the 25th of April 2016 and available for you to read on Conservative Home, she said those words. People will have you believe that she was a reluctant Remainer. Not so. The speech explores cogently all the arguments and comes down firmly on the side of the EU. What's changed? Well, of course, I understand that voters have had a referendum last year, and they spoke. But in my book, and those of my party, it's not democracy when a flimsy majority ride roughshod over a substantial minority, and most especially so when a few on either side would not have had the facts and expertise necessary to make the informed rather than an emotional decision. Compromise would be better. So I'm going to fight tooth and nail to reverse the process, and in particular campaign vigorously to ensure that whatever deal is finally negotiated, it's put back to you, the people, and at least the government, but at least this time you will know what you're voting for.
I now invite Hannah Clark for the Green Party.
I'm going to stand up for Isabella. You've got the back, so you've got me. Great. Hi, my name is Hannah, and I'm your Green candidate. Other than being the Green candidate for Harlow, I'm also the co-chair of the Young Greens of England and Wales. I was born in Harlow. I went to Latin Green Primary School, where Mark Hall, now Academy, was school, and then I went to London Thought for 2 years. And outside of the 3 years I spent at university, and then 6 years after graduation where I lived in Liverpool, I have lived here all my life, and that's 24 years minus kind of 3. In 2007, I was elected as one of 4 representatives for Harlow on the Young Essex Assembly, and then again in 2009 I was re-elected, but also elected as Harlow's Member of Youth Parliament as well. I'm standing because I want to stand up for our future, and because in the experience I've had as a youth councillor in the town, I've seen what Harlow has, and it has a great sense of community. My key pledges are a public NHS, because introducing an NHS Reinstatement Act, which would repeal the Health and Social Care Bill introduced in 2012, because I think that our NHS is struggling through privatisation and it needs to be better funded. I will stand up for our environment. Obviously I'm the Green candidate, because by the time the end of the term that this MP is elected on, by 2022, we will miss the target that we signed up to in the Paris Climate Agreement, which was a 2% rise in climate, which I think we really need to do something about. I'm going to stand up for an education system. I work for a school in Harlow. I'm passionate about ensuring that people have a strong future, and I'm really scared about the fact that schools, Stuart's Academy is facing £1.3 million in cuts next year, and we really need to make sure that we don't do that, because what that will mean to young people in the town is it will mean that they will have less opportunities, that they will be less funded, and we really need to plug that gap. And I'm also going to stand up for housing in the town. But more than that, I do a lot of these events on behalf of the Young Greens, and I make the same joke, and I'm going to make it now. I'm here on behalf of the Society for the Prevention of All Male Panels. Harlow is 70 this year and has never had a woman as an MP. So I will be a more representative MP, I will stand up for our future, and ultimately I'm going to stand up for what matters. Thank you.
And finally, I invite Mark Gove to speak on behalf of UK.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start by thanking you very much. I'm here for Half Harlow for holding this evening's event. We're not on.
Will. I'd like to start by thanking Reverend and Half Harlow for holding this evening's event. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mark Goff. I am the UKIP candidate for Harlow. My background is I was born just up the road in sunny Epping, and I moved to the house I still live in now in Cleveland just at the age of 1, so I've lived here in Harlow for 44 years. I brought up here in Harlow, and I live here in Harlow. I spent 20 years as a political activist. I started my political activism here in Harlow 20 years ago. As a Conservative, I spent 2 terms on Harlow Council from 2000 to 2004 and 2008 to 2012. In 2012, I left the Conservative Party for some very simple reasons. I could not stand up and look myself in the mirror knowing that we had a priority issue in this country. When we are not properly funding our NHS, treating mental health care patients properly, and looking after social care properly, there is something seriously wrong with our national priorities. And while we were doing that, we were sending vast sums of money to the EU, prioritising foreign aid instead of looking after our own people.
15 seconds.
And we were also spending money on the ludicrous HS2 training system. We would stop those. We would prioritise the UK and the NHS. Thank you.
We've tried to collate the questions that came through, and so usually they have 2 points to them, and often they're of opposite ends of the spectrum. The first question is on the economy. The question is, how would your party strengthen business productivity and maintain a sustainable budget through taxation and spending. And I'm going to invite Phil Waite for the Labour Party to speak first of all. Thank you, Phil.
Take the second part of the question.
The second part was, and maintain a sustainable budget through taxation and spending.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, on that question, how would we improve productivity within the British workforce? Well, I think the simple solution to that is start to invest in the British workforce, which this government has failed to do horrendously since it came into power. So we need to invest in skills, we need to invest in the economy, and Labour is committed to doing so. So we will borrow to invest in the economy, to invest in growth, and to invest in our people. We'll fix the problems within the school system, and we'll ensure that there is proper vocational training, and we'll also introduce free tuition fees, which clearly were removed and need to be replaced to allow our young people to develop. It's only by investing in our workforce that we will make that productivity come forward. How can we afford it? So the second question was around how we can have a sustainable budget. Well, I think, unlike the Tories, we have proposed exactly how we should pay for it. So our manifesto is fully costed, and it shows a clear divide between us and the Tories as to how we fund that growth in our economy. And it's only by investing, as I said, in that economy and by clearly defining where you find that money from that you'll get the kind of growth, the sustainable growth that we need. I'd also like to point out that every single financial target the Tories have set themselves since they came into power, they've miserably failed on. They were going to fix the deficit by 2015, they failed that one. It's now going to be 2025 or possibly later before they manage to do it. Clearly austerity isn't working and we need a different solution.
Thank you. And I invite Jeff Seath of the Lib Dems to speak.
Well, the first thing I wouldn't do in order to boost the economy is leave the European Union. It's not surprising to hear me say that. Let's just take one aspect of that, which is the 100 million euros that are being asked for as a precondition of the whole process, before you can even start negotiating. That money would be paid anyway. It's got to be paid. It's a commitment, it's a liability. But it would be paid in the normal way over 25 years, as we pay our normal pensions and so forth. Taking 100 million in 2 or 3 years out of the economy is going to leave a big hole in everybody's investment plans. So, think about it, folks. If you want money invested and to be used, Tories are apparently going to have an industrial strategy and back a few winners. I'm not sure. People have tried that before. They tried that back in the 1970s, and that didn't really work, did it? So I suspect, but you've got to have the money to do it, and they don't have that. The other thing I wouldn't do is raise taxes. We talk about sustainable economy. Shoving up corporation tax to 28% or whatever Labour thinks it's going to be able to do is not a way to keep a sustainable economy. Those companies will disinvest. They will move out of the UK. As indeed, of course, many people will move out, many companies will move out of the UK if we do leave the EU. So I can tell you, these are the negatives. We have a costed plan about also, don't disagree with Phil, we need to invest in our youth and training and skills, but we've got to make sure that we do have the money and the resources to do it. And I say, we're frittering them away.
Thank you. I now invite Harlow of the Green Party.
So I'm going to start off with the business part of the question and talk about small business in particular, because often when businesses are talked about, it's always the big corporations that are spoken about, and rather the small businesses, which make up between 90 and 99% of our economy, are actually ignored. So the Green Party has a passionate manifesto that helps small businesses, whether it's ensuring that the taxes they have to pay are fairer to generally help them get ahead, with what they need to do, and helping with startups to grow and ensure that we do have more local and small businesses around. In terms of a stable budget, well, we think that wealth is created by society, not just the rich few, and therefore our tax system should promote that, and it should be fairer. So if we increase taxes, it won't be on those who are on lower incomes, and it won't be on those on the middle classes either. It will be those who can afford to pay more taxes in order to fund the things that we need to be to have a good welfare state, like our NHS, like our education system. Because I don't think it's fair that what we've had in the past 7 years of the Conservative government is ultimately the lowest paid really being hit hardest, whether it's the bedroom tax, which has, even forced some people to commit suicide because of the cuts to their benefits, to things like housing benefits for under 21, so you can no longer get that if you are of a certain age, which I think therefore forces more people into homelessness. So, yeah, localism and fairer tax system is what we would do.
Mark Hall of UKIP.
Thank you. We are here, right. The situation with the national debt, ladies and gentlemen, I looked at before I left home this evening. Our national debt is growing at £5,170 a second. Yeah, a few goals there. The situation is pretty simple. We need to get control of our national economy. And Phil was strangely right on a couple of things that, in actual fact, all the Conservative targets that they set, they've missed. So we need to get our economy back into a decent state of affairs. Large quantities of PFI agreements across education, health, and a number of other sectors are certainly not helpful, nor is vast sums across the economy on wrong priorities. But indeed, small to medium sized businesses are the background and the foundation of our economy, and they need to be helped, and they need to be looked after, and they need to be able to grow, and that's the main factor. What I found quite interesting is that Jeff obviously hasn't read his party's manifesto in talking about tax rises, because apparently they're going to put 1p on every single tax rate. Thank you.
Oh, I have. Don't worry.
And now I'm going to ask Robert Harford to speak on behalf of the Conservatives.
Thank you. Well, the first thing we have to do is we have to be honest about the situation the country is in. We are spending hundreds of millions of pounds every week, not even to pay the debt. We're paying off the interest of the debt. Yes, the government have got the deficit down by 2/3, and have said in the manifesto today that they hope to eliminate it by 2025. But our country is still in a precarious state. There is no, however much we would like, there is no magic money tree out in the garden where we can just make one spending commitment after another. Not one magic tree in the garden.
This place was built to inspire and bless the community. The purpose of our gathering is to bless the community. With respect, we can listen to the arguments that each are making, and then with reason, we can make a decision. Please be cooperative and let people speak. I'm going to ask Robert to begin again.
So we have to make very hard choices, given the precarious state of our economy, and given how long it's taking to get the deficit down, even though we've made progress by cutting it by 2/3. So what do we have to do? Well, one, we have to improve the productivity in our country, and that means housing, it means infrastructure, and it means skills. On housing and infrastructure, we have a special £23 billion fund over the next 2 years to make sure we invest in roads, in rail and other infrastructure across our country and in housing. We also are investing a huge amount in apprenticeships. There is a levy on big business. So we will double apprentice spending by 2020 to 2.5 billion compared to what it was in 2010. And that means we will give young people a chance to climb up the ladder of opportunity, to get the skills, to get the training and to get the jobs that they need for the future. And yes, we also need to cut taxes as well. The Labour Party want to raise taxes to almost every business across the United Kingdom. If you cut taxes for business, it means they have more money to invest in machinery and capital spending and more money to employ more people. And post-Brexit, we need to do everything possible to attract more business. And the amazing thing is that even when the government cut corporation tax, which most businesses pay across the country, the actual revenue raised has been going up by many billions of pounds. And don't believe me, just look at the Independent Institute of Fiscal Studies. We need to cut taxes, we need to improve productivity, we need to build an apprenticeship and skills nation, and we need to be honest about the problems we face in our country and realise that we can't just have one spending commitment after another.
Yes, I'm going to have 5 minutes now where the panel can interact with one another. You want to come in, Jeff?
First of all, at 1p in the pound on tax, yes, it's hypothecated towards the NHS. It's a very specific purpose. It has got to do with the economy, but not that much. I'd like to ask Phil the question, and I'd like to ask Robert the question. Why do you think, Phil, that raising the corporation tax to whatever level it is, 28p from 17p that is now being proposed, would keep businesses in this country? Big companies are very clever. They know how to avoid that tax. They'll get out, and we'll have more Googles and more disinvestment from this country. And how do you think spending the money on nationalising water and rail is going to help the economy of this country? I'd like to ask you that, and I'd like to ask Robert where he thinks he's going to get the €100 million, 100 million euros that he's going to need to get out and to start the negotiations on Brexit, where that's going to come from and how that's going to help our economy. Thank you.
Well, I don't recognise this 100 million figure that is plucked from thin air, but we are going to get the best deal out of Brexit for independent Britain. I'm sure we'll come on to Brexit later on in the evening, but our plans are costed, they are realistic. As I say, they develop productivity, they develop skills, and they develop the infrastructure that we need for our country.
To reply to the questions, firstly, you need to get your facts right. So it's not 28%, it's 26. Secondly, that is for large corporations. So small business will have a reduced tax rate of 21%. So again, before we start criticising, we should actually look into what the manifesto says, maybe. But on top of that, these figures are figures which we used to have. So it's about making sure the balance is right. There's no evidence to suggest, just we go back to the rates that we had 10 years ago, suddenly business is going to up sticks and run away. It's about deciding where the taxation should fall that we need to fund our economy. Should it fall on you, the workers, or should it fall on a fair share being provided by business? I know where that should be, and I know where the Tories are going to place it. They've already made it clear in today's budget they're planning to increase taxes on you because they've removed all guarantees, and you can guarantee that's where they're going to go next. With regard to nationalisation, it's actually cost neutral. So again, if you look into how that's funded, it is cost neutral, and therefore it's irrelevant in the bigger picture. And with regard to Robert, to assume that the Tories are going to build some housing miraculously, bear in mind that they've failed miserably. We've had the worst record on house building since the Second World War, since 2010. Unless you find some money and invest it in house building, which has not happened up to now, I don't believe it will ever happen under the Tories.
Yeah, thanks. I'd like to question Phil on a couple of things there. If I'm not mistaken, when you were in government from 1997 to 2010, how many council houses did you build? How many council houses did you build?
I don't have a figure on it.
It's about zero.
Rubbish. I think there was definitely some, I don't have a figure.
How many did you build during government when you were in charge of Harlow Council?
Sorry?
How many did you build in charge of Harlow Council while you were in government?
Well, Harlow Council has for the first time in generation built some council houses while we were in that.
Just a quick one from Claire before we move on to the next question.
I find it very interesting to hear from Rob a almost jive about spending commitments. I have a spending commitment I'd like to question on. How about £100 billion over the next 30 years on a weapon system that we're never going to use? Our priorities for the government should not be, whether we renew a weapons system that we never use, and if we do have to use it, then it's not a deterrent. Rather, how should we provide for the people in our country? And I think if we want to provide for the people in our country, then we do need to invest in the services that provide for them, and we do need to ensure that we plug things like funding gaps in the NHS and like in our education. Otherwise, our future is at stake.
Thank you. Our second question is dealing with health, housing and poverty. The NHS faces huge challenges nationally, and our own hospital is severely stretched. What is your party proposing for the future of the NHS? There is also a national housing crisis. How do you propose to build affordable houses to rent or buy? It's interesting to hear what the propositions are, not the accusations of the other groups. And just a little addendum. Can you see a time when we will not need food bank any longer? I'm inviting Jeff to speak first.
I'm going to stand up. It seems to be better. Health. We've rolled three questions all together. It's going to be very difficult. My preferred solution to dealing with the pressures on the NHS is something quite different from money. It's preventative medicine. The things that we need to do to keep people out of hospital in the first place. And that ranges right across everything we do. Accident prevention, air quality improvements, obviously advice on diet and exercise. You probably didn't know this, but I'm going to tell you something, and quite shocking. The average life expectancy of people in Harlow, on average, is about 10 years lower than their colleagues up in Bishop's Stortford. Did you know that? And you're doing some things that are quite obviously causing problems for the NHS. It includes smoking, obviously, lack of exercise. So you've got to really think, this community has to think about the best ways of proceeding. Now, it is a fact that the local hospital here has some problems. They're being resolved, and it may be that you'll get a new hospital in the future, but the most important thing is to keep out the hospital in the first place. So we would put money into health prevention, preventative medicine, in all its forms, but we have promised that penny in the pound on tax for the health service. 1 million of it will be allocated to mental health, and that's a very, very important thing as well. So thank you very much, because that is also where things are going wrong, and that's causing pressure on the health service. As far as housing is concerned, we propose a rent-to-buy scheme where young people, you have to be young because it will take you 30 years, but it is a process by which young people will be able to rent a property and then eventually acquire it after payment of rent over a 30-year period, equivalent to a mortgage. So that's a very specific proposal that's coming from the Lib Dems. Finally, on food banks, I sincerely hope that there will come a time when we do not need them anymore. I don't have an immediate solution, but perhaps some of those when we can make some of those savings on the health service, we may be able to allocate it to ensure that people are in work and they don't need to resort to something like food banks, which I agree is a total disgrace in the 21st century.
Hannah.
So again, quite a large question to deal with. So firstly on housing, I think we need to look at what we have, and when 10 million people in this country are paying more than half their wages on their rent, then that's a real problem. So one thing that the Green Party will do is introduce what we call a living rent, and that will be a rent cap that ensures that landlords can't raise rents over inflation, and also introducing more secure tenancies as well, particularly scrapping the clause 21, I think it's called, which is a no-fault eviction, and it means that people do feel unstable in their homes, and we really do need to make sure that, I couldn't afford to live on my own at the moment, and at 24 years old, generations ago people probably would have moved out and had children and live and be married by now, and I can't do that, and that's troubling. In terms of building more homes, so firstly, we won't be selling off any more council housing, but also we want to build 100,000 social homes. That's going to cost about 8 billion. How we propose to fund that is by getting rid of some of the landlord tax breaks that they have. In terms of health, I did mention it before, we want to introduce an NHS Reinstatement Act. It was introduced in Parliament by Caroline Lucas in 2015, she's our one MP in Brighton Pavilion. It was then reintroduced in 2016 by a Labour MP, Margaret Greenwood. And basically what that does is it gets rid of the Health and Social Care Bill that was introduced in 2012, and it stops privatisation in our health service. We want to, as I've said, also plug that funding gap that we have. In terms of the PAH, I think what it's struggling with is an old building. It's also struggling with recruitment, so in terms of the fact that they're having to spend a lot of money on agency fees rather than funding their staff, so I think there is something that urgently needs to be looked at from that. We'd also stop further private finance initiatives happening and look where we can to sort of pay off some of the ones that already exist. In terms of food banks, yes, I would love to see the end of food banks, and I really do hope it. I do worry that it wouldn't happen under another Conservative government. On the long term, the Green Party would introduce what's called a basic income or a citizen income, which basically gives people a set amount of money rather than a benefit system. And that would be our long-term aim, really, to ensure that people don't have to use food banks and they can provide for themselves.
Big question. I'd like to start tackling housing. One of the biggest problems we have in housing in this country is something like 279,000 empty homes are in private ownership. That's a vast number of homes that are empty when people need roofs over their heads. Something needs to be done about that. We need to clearly incentivise that when we are building new homes that they go in the right place. So that means actively incentivising brownfield development. And we need to get worked out that it's possible that 2.5 million homes could be built on brownfield sites without damaging our greenfield. The other point is that, in actual fact, once we do build these houses, they need to be affordable. That's the biggest problem. We've got 23% of the homes in this country are qualified as affordable. And if you actually look in rural areas, that goes down to 5%, which is pretty ridiculous. Our housing policy is, from 2015's general election, was one of the most widely acclaimed. It was the housing policy that was actually classified as the one that by some senior housing unit people as the one that's actually physically tackling the issue. The NHS, well, I think later on when we come to Brexit, my main reason for moving to this party was that we need to get more finance into our NHS. And I went to see the hospital this afternoon and speak to the Chief Executive, and we're absolutely right. We need a new hospital in this town. I think that was something that all five of us would completely agree with. It needs a new building. We need to get some more staff in. They're something like 10% down where it should be. They need so much, and a new building is exactly what they need, and a new hospital, and that's something that we highlighted to UKIP a couple of years ago.
Thank you.
And just the last bit on food banks.
I'll cut you later on.
No problem. I don't think there's anyone in this room who wants food banks to remain. The sooner we can get rid of them, the better. And we're looking at financing 800 advisors into food banks across this country to help people get off them and get out of it.
Thank you. And finally on this question, I invite Robert Harford to speak. Oh, sorry, Phil. No, you're after Robert. Sorry.
Just wondered.
Yeah, sure. I've got a real estimate to make sure you all get it. Robert, sure go.
I'm proud of the investment we have been putting in the NHS. In Harlow, St Sandra Hospital, we've seen something like 37 new nurses, 27 new nurses, 35 new doctors, 27 new hospital doctors and 35 more nurses since 2010. The West Essex Community Care, basically the Old Primary Care Trust, had an increase of 6.6% in funding, and the government always covers the deficit of the hospital, but it faces three serious problems which have been highlighted. The problem of recruitment and the ability of people to work in London. We have a huge A&E use, more per head than almost anywhere else in England, and the hospital, whilst having outstanding staff, the building is not fit for purpose. So I think that the key thing that we have to do over the next few years, and which I would campaign for, work hard for if I was re-elected as MP, is get a new hospital to our town. Not just a new hospital, but actually a health campus, so that you can have everything there, from social care all the way through to hospital care, all together in one big health campus. The Secretary of State for Health has said that when they get money for capital funding from the Treasury, Harlow will be the top priority hospitals considered for a new hospital. I'm not promising to get you a new hospital, I'm promising you they'll do everything I can to make it happen. If you look at my record in terms of the other investment I've poured into Harlow, I will do everything and work hard as your MP. In terms of housing, this is a very serious issue. We had 230,000 affordable homes. Mark is right to say Labour Party didn't build one council house when they were in government. The reason why they were able to build council houses under the Conservative government was the new homes bonus, which gave every new house that was built meant that the council was given lots of money by the Treasury in order to build council houses, which I welcome. The government has said there's going to be a 23 billion infrastructure fund, which will include housing. There was measures announced in the manifesto today about building more council housing and working with progressive councils to release land. We also have to be honest as a society, because whenever we want to build anywhere, people protest because they're worried that it's being built on green fields and green spaces. Actually, 95% of our country is not built on. We'll only have cheaper and more affordable housing if we get more housing across our country. In terms of food banks, of course, if we have a strong economy and a strong society and more people employed than ever as we have today, then God willing, people will not be using food banks. But I pay particular tribute to Harlow Food Banks. That does incredible work. It was started under, in 2008, 2009. It was not something that had just come about now. There were more food banks per head in Germany and France than in the United Kingdom. This is a problem that is not just affecting Britain, but across the developing world. And it's something, of course, I want less people to use food banks. If they get jobs, they get prosperity, if they have a national living wage, if we cut their taxes, then hopefully they won't need to use food banks.
And finally, not least.
Thank you very much. Thanks for this question. I think this is one of my key concerns. So, can I just start by saying, anybody would think we weren't the 5th largest economy in the world. They would think this country was bankrupt and we couldn't afford to keep people from sleeping on the streets and to properly house them. It's nothing short of outrageous. We can afford not to have food banks. 2008, what happened in 2008? Well, I'll tell you what happened. This lot were elected, and all of a sudden we needed food banks. Why do we need food banks? Why the working people?
It was 2010.
Sorry. Apologies. But you know, before that, there was no need. We shouldn't be having food banks. We shouldn't be having the levels of homelessness we've had. There is no excuse for it, and it needs to be fixed. Moving on to housing. One of the biggest issues that Harlow County has been trying to deal with for a number of years. Now, we know there's been not enough housing built in Harlow, full stop. There needs to be a full range of housing, and Labour's committed to building up 1 million homes over the next 5 years. 100,000 of those will be social homes. We can invest in our town. We need to do that with the people. So obviously we are working on the local plan, so that will be done with the council and with local authorities, because there isn't enough room within the town's boundaries to build all the housing we need. So that's something that we're absolutely key to make sure does get done. Moving on from that to the NHS and social care. Clearly it is failing, and it's not failing due to any other reason than we're not investing enough money in it. If you look at the investment per person in this country compared to most of the rest of the Western world, we invest less. It's hardly surprising our health service performs worse. Our hospital has not met its 4-hour window for A&E for the last 2 years or more. It's not met its 17-week target for numerous years. And there's only one reason for it, and it's not because the hard-working staff in the hospital who care for people to the best of their ability day in, day out, because it's not being invested in. We'll fix the staffing crisis by investing in staff, investing in the people, lifting the public sector pay cap, and bringing nurses through the bursary system to get them to help this community. Yeah, is that it?
Again. Robert, your party is proposing to limit immigration to 100,000, I think, per year, was it? And your party, Phil, or your dear leader, has told us... Sorry, come. I beg your pardon. Can I start again?
Yep.
Robert, your party has told us it's going to limit immigration to 100,000 people a year. Your party, Phil, through your dear leaders, told us Brexit is settled. Now, you know that the hospital here has got a staff shortage in nurses, at least 20 staffing members short, plus a 15% shortage on their actual budget. Where are we going to get these people from? And that's not just nurses, it goes right up the chain. Half, so not half the staff, but a good proportion of all staff, 15% nurses, and a good proportion of doctors are from overseas. What happens? How are we going to fill that gap?
So I mean, on the nursing crisis or the crisis of staffing in the NHS, absolutely we need to ensure that it's staffed up until it can be replaced from homegrown talent. Now, I'm not proposing that we get rid of or stop the current people who are working in this country. Labour's policy is clear. Everybody that is here at the moment will stay here, and we should be giving rights as of day one to all EU migrants that currently work in this country, unlike the Conservatives who want to use it to bargaining chip.
Yeah, but what about the future?
So, for the future, we need to look at that as part of the negotiations on Brexit. So we are clear that we need to make sure there are enough workers in this country to deliver all the jobs. And we'll make sure that happens as part of the Brexit negotiations, should we be in power.
Thank you. The issue with NHS staff is not new. It's been a problem before we were in the EU, and it's a problem now. And if you actually look across the country, particularly if you go into our inner cities, you will see that without our friends from the Commonwealth, we probably wouldn't have an NHS in many of our inner cities. And it's time we made, and that's exactly what controlled immigration, looking for the skills we actually need in this country is all about.
But we're short now, immediately.
Yes. That follows on to exactly my second point, which is that if you look at just about every medical school, every nurse training place, every single place has about between 10 and 30 applications to it. We don't have an issue with training people in this country. We have a problem with lack of space to train people in this country, and that needs changing.
Thank you. I just want one comment to Phil. It's important to get the facts here. He talks about the patients being seen in under 4 hours. Over 10,000 more people were seen in under 4 hours in 2015-16 compared to the last year of the Labour government. 82.5% of people were seen within 4 hours 2016 this year. So I just wanted to get the facts out exactly what is truly happening.
Thank you.
I'm still kind of flabbergasted by Mark talking about immigration, because I think actually it's some of the narratives that his party has created that is stopping people wanting to come to this country and contributing to our economy. And actually, rather than putting arbitrary caps on the skills that people need or the amount of people that come in, what we need to look at is a humane system of immigration that recognises that often the reason people need to immigrate is because of the policies that we've promoted abroad as well. So just, yeah, flabbergasted that it's all suddenly he loves immigration and that's a great thing for him, because that's just not what I've heard from his party in the past sort of 7 years I've had to experience his leader on TV.
We move on now to our third question, and the third question is on the subject of education. Many people write in on each of the themes, and so I tried to reflect some of the things. Some were reflecting upon the standards that have increased, and also a sense of aspiration that has improved in Harlow, and wanted to affirm that point. Others have pointed out that IT costs are rising and making education much more expensive, more effective with IT, but IT raises the cost of schooling. There are also going to be an increase in pupils over the next few years. The Department of Education says that the schools need to find some savings. This question is not dealing so much with the finance as dealing with the emotional side of what is happening. Here's the question, as I read it verbatim. What plans does your party have to address the crisis in the emotional needs and well-being of both children and teachers caused by hyper-competitive ethos encouraged by all previous governments? How will your government now plan to embed care, collaboration and empathy into the education system from early years to higher education? This touches upon the social mental health issues that are being addressed as well in the wider community.
How will they fund this?
Now,
you need to include in that how will it be funded, because there is a whole political debate about the level of funding, and that question is you posed it, and there were I know that there were questions that when people asking about educational funding, that question is you posed it ignores the economics of it.
You've had the opportunity to make that point, and I'm sure the panel have heard it, and they'll consider finance when they're speaking in their reply. I invite, first of all, Hannah to speak.
So I mentioned in my introduction that I work in a school. I work in Sir Charles County UTC, which is based on the Harlow College site, and it is a school, a slightly new type of school that was introduced by the Conservative government. That said, I do have problems with academisation, and I think that we've lost a sense of accountability by having more academies in the town. In terms of the sort of social aspect of education, we've seen an increase in children calling childline because of their mental health. Also, as someone who works in school, I've seen a lot of students who are troubled with mental health issues, and because of the stresses of their education, So in terms of children, we would ban the SATs exams, which I threw up before my SATs exams in Year 6, so I guess that shows how stressful they are. In terms of the health of teachers and staff in schools, well, one thing I would gladly say is that my party would scrap Ofsted, and as someone who's had to deal with Ofsted, it's so horrible and so stressful, so definitely that's probably my favourite thing. And according to a survey of teachers, actually, stress, anxiety and panic attacks have increased in primary schools by 78% in the last 2 years. So I think what we need to look at is what's causing that, and I'd say that's constant changes in the education system. I'd say that's more pressure and targets put on the education system, and just these arbitrary things that the government has decided that suddenly children need to learn. Budgets, I will address. I probably know more than most about educational budgets. As a member of support staff in a school, I have to deal with a budget. And I'm genuinely worried about the cuts, because what happens when you cut school funding is that there are things that begin to suffer, and whether it's trips and visits which enrich children's education, whether it's careers guidance. One thing that we are potentially losing is our careers advisor, who provides an excellent standard of careers advice to our students, and young people who interact with a careers advisor more than 4 times are more likely to earn an average of £16,000 more a year in their adult working life, which is per year, which is huge. And those things that enrich education are at risk, and we really do need to plug that funding gap. We'll find it from somewhere. Ultimately, when you look at the Green Party policies, you have to look at them in a wide system of reform. And I think we need to invest in our education, because it's education that enables us to live and learn, and that's the one thing that I'm so keen on making sure that we do.
Now, Mark.
Crisis and emotional need. Speaking to the microphone.
Emotional need of education. The main issue in helping emotional need is twofold, really. Firstly, it's making sure that you create an atmosphere that children want to learn in. And secondly, that you make the curriculum interesting enough and relevant enough that they want to learn. And I think the problem with that tends to be that not everyone wants to go down the academic route of going to university. We need to improve the level of academia so that you look down some apprentice routes, which actually is something that I think Robert deserves an enormous amount of credit for. What he's done with the apprenticeship. But what that actually means is you have to look at how you fund it, how you look at the school system. And that means you have to create a situation where there is a lot of different types of schools that meet individuals' needs. And it's only very recently that the Conservative Party has suddenly come round to our way of thinking on grammar schools. But that also means if you actually look, but in terms of answering the question on funding, that means prioritising education and putting it higher up the agenda than it is at the moment, and actually putting spending in the right places at the right time.
Thank you. Robert.
Thank you. Well, the first thing is we have to make sure that our schools are fit for purpose. I'm glad that with the proposed funding, 20 out of 22 primary schools in Harlow will see an increase in funding. I welcome the over 6 million that has gone into the pupil premium in schools across Harlow. I'm glad that no school will face a cut. I also know Hannah very well. I know Hannah very well because of the sterling work that she does in the UTC, which I fought for 3 years to get to Harlow with 10 million plus investment from the government. And we're very lucky to have you. See, Hannah's one of those people in there who made that UTC so successful. Now, in terms of the emotional well-being, this is an incredibly important question. I've seen some remarkable work going on in Stuart's Stewart's School, and the emotional well-being of students is incredibly important, and that's why the government are investing in and have announced mental health first aid training in secondary schools, billions of pounds to be spent on mental health funding and mental health staff trained in mental health issues. And I think that is one step forward. I think that the work that schools do with charities and community organisations, like the Stewart's example, should be replicated, because I think the Stewart's provides a model for many other schools to follow.
Phil,
The interesting point about
just a minute, thank you. Just a minute, please. Excuse me.
Listen to the chair.
You to talk me down again. Sit down, sir. You are rebelling against everyone else here. I refuse to let you speak.
Listen to the chair.
You must not have another word. You must not have another word. Just sit down. Sit down. If we all behave what you I thank you all for your help there in bringing discipline to the meeting. Phil, would you speak?
What about a bit of truth, then?
What about the truth?
So,
Phil, would you stand and speak, please?
so look, I'll address some of these points. Sorry, guys, can you let me speak, please?
Phil has the floor to speak on behalf of the Labour Party.
So, I'm going to speak from a position of experience. My wife works in one of the schools in Harlow. My children have all been through the schools in Harlow, so I think I know a little bit about what we're facing at the moment around education. So, first and foremost, let's talk about the types of schools that we should have in this country. Free schools. No, we shouldn't have free schools. Grammar schools. No, we shouldn't have grammar schools. We should have an education system that is equal for all and accessible by all, and not with selective students. The Labour Party is committed to that, and we'll make sure that's delivered. To go on some other things, and I'll get to the figures later, don't worry, they are absolutely on top of my mind. We're also going to introduce free school meals for all primary school children, because clearly having a decent meal is very important. We are going to look at testing and the amount of testing that happens and reduce it dramatically, because there is no need. We'll invest in teachers. We'll invest in teachers' pay by removing the pay cap, and we'll look to make sure collective bargaining is restored to teachers, to make sure that the teaching profession is wanted or respected in this country, which it is at the moment. We'll reintroduce EMA. We'll bring arts to the curriculum, because a human being is a whole individual. He's not just a series of tests. And we need to make sure that we look at everything as part of the curriculum, which we're not at the moment. The current cuts, which I will get to, will be fully reversed. Tuition fees. Why? It wasn't a long time ago when I was 18, but my generation and most of the rest of the people in this room got to go to university for free. What's changed in this country? Why suddenly have you got to pay to get university education, which benefits the economy? It will be reversed. We'll also reintroduce maintenance grants. Right, now let's get on to the costs. Yes, Robert's right. They have put more money into schools. But that's because there's more children in the schools. The cost per pupil has gone down. Harlow schools, in the next 2 years, will lose £5.5 million in real terms. That is unacceptable, and we will make sure that's reversed. We'll make sure we invest in our children's future for the future of this town.
Thank you. I'm going to invite people from the floor. Now, what I do need is I need people to raise their hand and to cooperate with me. And if you raise your hand, I'll invite you to speak. But please, as we open it out into a wider discussion for a short time, I do appreciate it if you work cooperatively with me. But Jeff's going to speak first of all.
Thank you. Funnily enough, I totally disagree with the Labour Party on some of these issues. No grammar schools, and certainly no more grammar schools, although Phil doesn't tell us whether he would actually abolish the ones that exist. And we certainly want to ensure that free meals are not taken away from primary school children. We also want, and would place a greater emphasis on early years, and we want to introduce childcare from about the age of 15 months. We'd like to bring it down to that level. Because you see, some of those problems in school emanate from the home in the first place. So you've got to make sure that children are given that right start in life. So we would certainly do everything that we can to ensure that that's the case. Now, just on the care of children in school, my wife happens to be a psychotherapist. She's been a psychotherapist in a school in Harlow, and she sees a whole range of problems. Everything from bereavement to ill discipline. I don't know why they send them to the psychotherapist. She is battling, because there's only one of her and dozens of children who need this sort of care. So as far as we're concerned, mental health of children in school is paramount. We would like to put some of that 5 billion that we want to put into education, which is costly, you have to look at our budget, towards, again, mental health. That's one of our key issues. We do want to restore funding, equality of funding around the nation, and we would also try and ensure that the 5.5 million that's being taken from Harlow is put back, at least on an equitable basis with other schools. So, probably in summary. Thanks.
Thank you. If you could raise your hand, what I'd like you to do is contribute by making a point, not asking questions of the panel. Tony.
Thank you very much, Tony Durkin. It's really a statement. We're talking about health and we're talking about children and education. Isn't it a modern day scandal that school nurses are being diminished in their roles and responsibility, and they have been privatised by Virgin Healthcare, who are more interested in profit than caring for children who need it at that earliest point? We're also concerned about mental health, and the next stage is the privatisation of that. And wouldn't the panel agree that Harlow nurses should deserve a pay award above the 1%? And why isn't RFP subscribing the 1% tax?
Thank you.
You said make a point, not a question, Mr. Bradley. 2 of you on the panel would scrap tuition fees, and the other 3 of you all supported increasing it to £9,000 and higher a year. I'll let everyone else here guess who that is.
Stefan.
Further teachers leave the profession after 5 years of qualifying because of the stress and their only seek for 1% pay rise, which is a real terms pay cut since the Tories came into power. Let that sink in. They do not
So,
thank you. I know many teachers, and many of them are looking at retiring early or just leaving the profession because they are overworked, underpaid, and who actually closed Latin Bush Comprehensive School and Nettiswell Comprehensive School. It was Margaret Thatcher and the Tories. I know that because I used to go to Latin Bush, and it's one of the 2 best schools in this town. And they are continuing to cut the budgets within education. Our children deserve better.
Really important points made about how teachers are leaving the profession. I think that this is mainly done because the goalposts continue to move. School is about enriching children, not about making them hit the A or the A star. It should be an all-round experience for the young people. Stop changing the goalposts. C to A or whatever worked. Why do we need to go to a 1 to 9 system that even the teachers do not understand? This is making children more stressed and making the mental health issues in school way worse than it's ever been before.
In a month's time, we will have had our new MP for 10 days. Although we're not allowed to ask questions at this point, when it comes to summing up, I would be interested to hear from the candidates how they will work to unite this community, to work together from Harlow, focusing on what unites us rather than what divides us. Thank you.
Yes. Sorry, a bit louder, please.
Sorry, they are actually directed specifically at council. And when you were asked about food banks, bear in mind as well that your government has actually been in power for 7 years. You're not on the panel as somebody that's talking about what you might do. We are looking at your record as somebody that has done something. And what you have done is created a society where, in my job, actually, it's my absolute shame and horror, have to give out food bank vouchers to people that are sometimes working, but more often than not, they are a result of universal credit and benefit sanctions. So on your £112 per hour, which is your wage, which gives you a weekly wage around about £4,800, something like that. Please tell me if that's incorrect. For you to sit there and say, God willing, about food banks, I think to your utter shame, you should hang your head amongst the people of this town. And I hope we never actually see you again and have to see you about anything.
Okay, and the final contribution that is here.
Some of the best ways to help the youngest. Would the panel agree that some of the best ways to help some of the youngest people in our society is to give them the skills to be able to
I will read it right.
Or am I?
Yeah. Would be to equip them with the skills they need for the rest of their life. Will they not acknowledge? Will the panel acknowledge the success this government's had in providing apprenticeship places for people than at any time since the war?
I'll speak up for you. What he said was, would you acknowledge that this government has done an exceedingly amount in helping skills in equipping the younger generation for things? Have I quoted you correctly?
With the rapid increase of apprenticeships, yeah.
With the rapid increase of apprenticeships. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you everyone for the questions and the kind wishes. Let's remember where we were a few years ago. For whatever reason, we can argue about the reasons, but the country was on the verge of bankruptcy. The Labour Chief Secretary of the Treasury left a note saying there was no money left in our country. And we should remember that those are the facts. There was no money left in our country. We have had to deal with an incredibly significant deficit. But I'm proud of, as MP, and it's interesting that people just want to shout people with different views down, and I think it reflects well on the Labour Party, to be honest, that they weren't here. Now, let's talk about more schools, good or outstanding. More schools, good or outstanding, than any time in our country's history. More Harlow pupils in good or outstanding schools. We have boosted the academies, the standards in Harlow are increasing. Academy standards have gone up. We have the record of the results in our schools have gone up across the board. Now, in terms of people were talking about the student loans, we have introduced degree apprenticeships. So any young person can go and get an apprenticeship, a level 5, a level 6, and take no loan at all. Not only do they take no loan, but they get paid on top of that, so they earn while they learn. And in fact, Anglia Ruskin campus will be having a degree apprentice. We are offering every young person that reaches the age of 16 either a traditional academic education or a traditional academic education or a state-of-the-art technical education, where they will be able to choose 15 technical, high-quality routes. We're investing billions and billions of pounds to make sure our young people can find that level of opportunity to get the jobs and prosperity that they need for the future. Thank you.
Move on to our fourth question, and this illustrates the fact that we've got questions coming both ways from the floor. It's talking about Brexit and immigration. What is your understanding of hard or soft Brexit? Now, I've got two questions coming here. One says from one side, what is your party planning to do to cut immigration? And the other question was, what is your party planning to do to welcome EU workers, migrants and refugees? I'll read it once more. What is your understanding of hard and soft Brexit? What is your party planning to do to cut immigration? And on the other hand, what is your party planning to do to welcome EU workers, migrants and refugees? And I'm inviting Mark to speak first.
Thank you. Okay, let's tackle that first bit. This strange phrase that comes up now, we've suddenly had this a hard or a soft Brexit. I think it's pretty meaningless, to be honest. I think the people of this country voted for Brexit. Now, to me, what that means is they want us to come out of the common market, they want us to get control of our borders, they want us to get our fishing rights back, they want us to improve our deals on agriculture, they want us to stop giving vast sums of money to the EU, and they want us to spend that money here in the UK. That's what Brexit means. No hard, no soft. Controlling immigration, to me, means that exactly what my party has spoken about for a very long time. It means bringing in an Australian points-based system where it's open to all based on skills. That's what it means. What was the other last part?
Refugees. What would you do to welcome EU workers, migrants and refugees?
I think that one of the greatest things that we have in this country is our sense of justice, fair play, and the fact that we welcome everybody. That's exactly what we're meant to do, and I think that's something that as a country we have a very proud record of, and I'm very proud of that.
Robert. Well, one thing we have to be clear of is that the country voted for Brexit. In Harlow, 68% of the people voted for Brexit. So I disagree with our Liberal Democrat friend on the panel, because we have to do what the British people voted for. Otherwise, we might as well not have a referendum. We might as well kiss our democracy goodbye. And I think that whatever one's views about it, I think that we have to do. Now, in terms of what does Brexit mean, there is no such thing as a hard or soft Brexit. What it means is that we're withdrawing from the customs union, we're withdrawing from the single market, we're withdrawing from the core, the institutions of the European Union, and we will get a deal that is best for an independent Britain. Now, as many of you know, I voted Remain because I was very cautious and concerned about the possible future, both in terms of what was going on in the world and also because I felt a duty because of what might happen to jobs. But let me just tell you a story. I went to visit a company during the referendum in Harlow that employs many local people. They showed me a letter from Airbus which said that they were going to lose jobs if we left the European Union because they wouldn't be able to supply Airbus. I went to see that company yesterday, and that company said actually Airbus had increased their orders and the things have never been going better for that company. They've just opened a £2 million new centre and employing more Harlow residents. So I'm happy to be proved wrong on these issues, but I think that we have to make sure that Brexit means Brexit. We have to regain control of our immigration. We're also having an immigration skills charge for big companies so that if they employ people from outside, they will pay a skills charge which will then invest in our own population. In terms of the refugees, we are spending billions and billions of pounds, almost more than any other country, in Syria, and we are focusing on helping those who are actually in the camps in the Syria or Iraq border. And we said that we would have 20,000 open what was the parliament between 2015 and 2020.
Brexit is Brexit. Anybody know what it means? Because I still have got no idea. It keeps coming out of the Tories' mouth. It means nothing. Because they've not come up with what it means. Is it hard Brexit? Is it soft Brexit? Is it? Who knows? Anyway, we'll leave that to the Tories to answer, but I am baffled on it. Anyway, to answer the question, what does Brexit look like as far as the Labour Party is concerned? Well, it looks like we have agreed to come out of the European Union, so that is what we will negotiate. However, we will maintain access to the free market and to the customs union. We believe they are central to being able to trade prosperously with the European Union. 44% of our trade is to the EU. £13.7 billion comes out of the eastern region and trade to the EU, and 44% and 300,000 jobs in the eastern region are based on trade with the EU. It is not something we can afford to lose. Moving on to what we're going to do about immigration. We're not going to set an arbitrary figure which we're going to fail to meet like the Tories have done again. They talked about tens of thousands since they've been elected, and they've failed to deliver tens of thousands since they've been elected. And I don't believe that the tens of thousands figure they promised in this manifesto will be achieved either. The immigration figure needs to be what it needs to be to deliver prosperity for this country. Further to that, absolutely the people of Harlow voted for Brexit. Now, my personal view, from having spoken to quite a lot of them over the last few months and years on the doorsteps in Harlow, is very simple. They are fed up with big business exploiting them and undercutting their wages, and they want to see an end of it. That will be the manifesto, and that's something we will deliver. They are fed up with a perception that immigration is affecting the NHS and is affecting housing. It's not. The Tory government is affecting the NHS and affecting housing, and we will reverse that. And lastly on immigration, once the deal is done, there will be a free vote in Parliament to decide on whether that's the deal we go with or whether we look at some other options. But Brexit means Brexit is a nonsensical argument. And just before I finish, because the Tory party is no longer the Tory party, it seems to be the Theresa May party. Well, the Labour Party is the Labour Party, and it's standing on the Labour Party's principles. I don't know if you've seen any of the Tory stuff, but it's not mentioned any logos or anything else. It is the Theresa May party. Now, what I do for a day job is I go and negotiate with employers. I'm a trade union official. Yeah? If I went into negotiation, the way she's behaving, I can guarantee bad outcomes. And I just don't believe that the stance she's taking will deliver us a decent outcome.
the 1,000 refugees, whatever the figure is, which has not been on by the Tory party. I think 300 refugees are coming at the moment, and this close. So that's the first thing. The next thing is immigration. Let me tell you something about immigration. There's something worse than immigration. That's immigration. And I can tell you, I can see lots of young people leaving this country in droves where the opportunities are not here after Brexit. I'm going to give you an example of a local business, a farmer business, I won't name the companies. There are a number of them here, and there's a lot of employment people in Harlow. They rely on grants from the EU and collaborative working with other member states and scientists. The life sciences industry is critical to Harlow. I tell you, when those grants dry up, those people, those young people, will go looking for those opportunities in mainland Europe or elsewhere in the world. You will miss them. Theresa May has become the Pied Piper of Harlow. As far as, well, I mean, I could talk all night and would love to talk all night about what Brexit means. My concern, first of all, is to say, I don't think the deal is going to be done. The preconditions set by the European Union are very high. Never mind the 100 billion, which Robert says he doesn't recognise. It's all over the papers. It is not a figure that's been made up, it's a figure that's been calculated. We may negotiate a slightly lower figure, but it will be something of that order. There are other factors. The Irish border, what are we going to do about the Irish border? It's not going to be left, it has to be dealt with before we even go into negotiations. An open border, it will allow any Juan, Ricard or Tomas to get in to that through Ireland. You're going to get immigration through that route if we don't close. Well, I'm sorry, I can't tell you more, but I would like to ask a few questions.
Sorry. So on Brexit, we do recognise as the Green Party that people did vote to leave the European Union, but ultimately what we say to you is that when you enter a business deal, you don't do that without the contract on the table, and when you buy something, you've got 14 days to return it. So ultimately what we offer this country is a second referendum once the final deal is on the table, so that we can confirm that the deal we're given is what we voted for. Because I disagree, Mark. I think people did vote for a variety of different reasons for Brexit, and some people voted for one and some voted for other, and we need to make sure that that deal ultimately is for the good of the people. What I'm particularly worried about with the Brexit negotiations is that we're going to lose a lot of our environmental protections from the EU, and that's why we've introduced the Environmental Protection Act, particularly focusing on clean air, because air pollution kills on average 40,000 people a year, which is huge. On immigration, I think perhaps some controls on immigration are necessary, but I think we must respect our international obligations on refugees. I think we must allow people to come to the UK to study rather than stopping international students. I think we also must not put arbitrary skill needs or arbitrary wages that you need to earn to be a migrant in this country, because that doesn't allow us to have the necessary system of immigration. Our immigration system needs to be humane, and what has been proposed by the right is not humane, and we really need to change that. By the end of 2016, we had accepted 18% of our fair share of refugees on proportion to the size of the economy. The Dubs Amendment said that we would take 3,000 refugees, we've taken just over 10%, 350. That is shameful. It's absolutely shameful that our foreign policies are problems that are meaning that people are having to leave their country. And also what we need to look at is the fact that in future years to come, we are also going to have climate migration, where people are really struggling with the effects of climate change in the nation. They are going to have to move. And what we really need to do is make sure that we are taking our responsibility for that. And if we don't take the refugees that we need to take and our fair share, then we're not going to do that. And I proudly stood at Yarlswood in a number of protests. My party was there last weekend to launch our Women's Manifesto. Because things like Yarlswood, which is a detention centre for immigrants and asylum seekers, are shameful that we're doing that. So that's one thing that we'd also oppose. Thanks.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised the meeting would finish at 9 o'clock. I took the opportunity of giving people an opportunity to speak from the floor. So I beg your indulgence. I'd like to give each of the candidates the 2 minutes to conclude, appealing to you for your vote. And I'll do that in the reverse order to what we had when we started with 2 minutes. So I begin with Mark Rose.
Thank you, Chairman. This election is apparently all about Brexit. That's apparently what it's about. If that is the case, as I have said previously and in interviews, that if you are a true Brexiteer, will go in and bat for Harlow, I'm that man. No other candidate sat up here voted for Brexit. I'm the only Leaver in town. As a party, we have 5 pledges for this election. We would cut immigration. We want a more secure Britain. We would put the NHS before foreign aid. We would protect British culture. And we want fair democracy. That's all I'm going to say. That's very much what we believe in. That's where I'm coming from. That's me.
Thank you, Mark. And now I invite Hannah, please.
Thank you for listening to me today and everyone else, and thank you to Mark, or as he calls himself in the local press, Farage's stormtrooper. Given the, I really wish you'd thought about the connotations surrounding that name. Given the circumstances in this election, I'm not expecting to be Harlow's next MP as much as I'd love to. I think that, the result has already been framed by the Prime Minister, and so it's very hard for us to, therefore, particularly with the electoral system we have, to ensure that we do have fair representation. What I can say is that you have nearly 500 Green candidates throughout the UK who are standing up for what matters. We are standing up for our NHS, we are standing up for our environment, we are standing up for our education system, and that's what I hope to do as a candidate in Harlow, and I hope that you will agree with me that what we really need to do and what I really want to do is stand up for our future. Thank you.
Oh, I see. Yeah, well, I'm here. Sorry. UKIP is irrelevant. It's done its damage. Labour won't help you. It's, as far as they're concerned, the matter is on Brexit is settled, and Jeremy Corbyn has been anti-EU throughout his career, and he's taken moderates, I believe, like Phil, down with him. They deserve. You're looking at the death throes of the Labour Party. Sad. You know where you are with Robert. There's no doubt about that. But I should just like to put to him, in my closing speech, just to think about one particular aspect of Brexit and the European Court of Justice. And he might like to recall, he probably knows more than many people, why it should be, why it came into existence. There was a democratic government in 1933 in a European state. It decided, it was elected democratically. It oppressed its peoples. Jews, gypsies, disabled journalists, artists, anybody who opposed them. That is why we need a European Court of Justice, because no state should be able to oppress its own people. Everybody's got a right to be able to appeal to a higher court. And he might like to think about that in his hatred of this particular institution. I say to you that if you're one of the 30%, I'm just winding up, one of the 30% in this constituency who voted to remain, if you've got any doubts about the process, where it's all going, where it's leading to, how it's being done, and whether it can actually be achieved, the Liberal Democrats can represent you very well in this process. We are the only party that's been true to our principles right throughout. We say that we want you to decide the final outcome of those negotiations. Thank you very much.
Okay, so why am I asking you to vote for me on the June the 8th? Well, it's very simple, really. Under Labour, you and your family will be better off and will get a better deal than under the Tories. This is a two-horse race with respect to the other people on the panel. There are only two parties in this town that can win, the Tories and us. Under the Tories, Essex lost 800 police officers and many PCSOs since they were in power. Fire service systems in tatters, fire deaths are on the up, justice system is failing, legal aid has been withdrawn, and promoting the introduction of employment tribunals of £1,200 has caused disaster for workers. Under Labour, we will invest in our police and the fire service. We'll work with them to ensure they are properly resourced to look after our communities, starting with introducing 10,000 police officers and 3,000 fire officers. We'll also deliver day one rights for workers, and we'll also safeguard them from unfair treatment at work and do away with tribunal fees. Housing. It's been a major issue. Since 2010, home building is at a record low. The Tories won't deliver on their promises, and in the next Parliament we will deliver 1 million homes and 100,000 in what will be social rent. We'll deal with the scourge of homelessness. We are the 5th biggest economy in the world, and we shouldn't allow the amount of rough sleeping that is going on and has gone on and increased dramatically since the Tories took power. We'll also fix the privately rented market and fix that for all the residents of this country and this town. NHS and social care deserves to be properly funded, properly paid for, and it deserves staff who are paid the proper rate of pay for their jobs and don't have to go to food banks to top up their wages. We'll also ensure we invest in doctors through bursaries, and I will do everything I can as quickly as possible to replace Harlow's Hospital. It needs at least £100 million spent on it at the moment just to keep it going, and it needs replacing in the near to medium term. Schools, I've covered earlier, major issue. We will invest in schools and education. We'll make sure that our teachers are respected. We'll make sure our children are brought up properly and given the education they need and deserve. The economy has been a disaster since the Tories took over. They promised that austerity would fix it. Clearly, it has failed dramatically. We will make sure that we invest in our economy, we grow our economy, and by growing our economy, pay down the deficit, because if you look at history, Labour has always paid the deficit down, the Tories have always grown it. Labour offers a message of hope, where the economy is designed to benefit the normal working family. We can and will get this country off its knees and allow people to earn enough money to live properly instead of relying on benefits and food banks. So please vote Labour on June the 8th. Please vote for me, and I promise to deliver for you and work as hard as I possibly can to deliver for Harlow.
Thank you.
Finally, Robert, building an even better Harlow, championing education and jobs, cutting the cost of living, cherishing our villages, protecting our NHS, ensuring that Brexit does mean Brexit. These are my priorities. These are what I have fought for. These are the things that I've actually worked hard to bring millions of jobs, thousands of jobs to Harlow, millions of pounds in investment. Judge me not just what has gone on here tonight, but judge me on my record. As somebody who does Harlow, who champions Harlow at every opportunity. I brought jobs, apprenticeships and investment into our town. And I'm proud of the record of the Conservative government in transforming our economy, ensuring that we have the highest number of people employed on record, ensuring that Harlow, more people in Harlow are employed and we're much lower than the national average, and ensuring that we have a Prime Minister that will give us strong and stable leadership, and that we will have a strong voice for Harlow in Parliament. Thank you.
On behalf of the whole panel, I'd just like to thank Robert for allowing us to
I want to say thank you to all 5 candidates for putting themselves forward and offering themselves to be servants of our community. As you can judge, being a leader, whether you're a councillor or whether you're a politician in Parliament, you get a lot of breakbacks. But with a heart that wants to serve our community and bless the town and the villages, I want to thank all 5 of them for their willingness to serve. Please give them a round of applause. And I liked what Councillor Ian Beckett said a little earlier in the meeting. You know, when all this is over, we're all to pull together to make this a great place. And with that kind of spirit, I'm sure Harlow's going forward. Thank you all for coming this evening.